had spoofed Gilligan's Island. We had spoofed Star Trek. And I had this idea for, what other fun genres could we go after of spoofing Batman. And my initial idea was that it would be Bob, and Bob would be Bat Bob. And I had a vision of a teaser scene to kind of tell people, this is what it's going to be like, of Bat Bob, standing on the edge of a building, looking down at night, very dramatically with this huge cape billowing behind him. He'd strike a pose and say, "I'm Bat Bob." And then all of a sudden the wind would pick up and his cape string would break and his cape would go flying off into the night behind him, and he'd go chasing it across the roof and look down and say, "A little help?" You just kind of set up, this is what this is going to be like. And then I thought, well, wait a minute, he needs Robin, so Larry could be Robin, effectively. So maybe it would be, and the first thing that popped into my head was Bat Bob and Larry Boy.
Well, Larry Boy first appeared in Dave and the Giant Pickle, and that was sort of a costume that Larry donned because he wasn't feeling special as himself, and so he put on this costume of Larry Boy and got stuck to the wall in the countertop scene, and Bob brought him down and told him the story of Dave and the Giant Pickle, which basically taught him that little guys can do big things too, and that he should feel special about just being himself. But it was okay to dress up like superheroes.
And so he puts on, a spandex costume with toilet plungers on the side, and I have no idea. I remember sketching out the costume. I think Chris Olsen came up with the color scheme and actually built it, but I did this little sketch and just thought he needs to have something that makes it look like it's homemade, and he's put it together himself, and it's kind of ludicrous. And out of somewhere came toilet plungers on his head.
Wherever there is trouble, I'll be there. Whatever a helpless vegetable calls out, I will answer. Evildoers beware. You are no match for the awesome power of Larry Boy and his super suction ears.
And people loved it. They loved the idea, of him and his toilet plungers, and there was just so much possibility there that we thought, okay, we need to do a whole Larry Boy adventure. And hence came the development of Larry Boy, and the Fib from Outer Space, kind of a classic, sci-fi 50s feel. Something big comes from outer space, falls to the earth, and he has to fight it and combat it.
From my standpoint, what I remember most, just beside voice work, and it hurting more to do Larry Boy, because there's just a lot of screaming, "Alfred!" And I just remember my voice hurting a lot coming out of those sessions. We did 1 million takes, and because we're just starting, to develop the character.
I've been driving around all day. I'm tired. I'm hungry. I've got to go to the bathroom. This suit is very constricting.
Larry is a little higher and a little squeakier, and then Larry Boy just gets a little gruffer. That's all, a little rougher around the edges.
The monster is headed toward the Bumbleberg water tower. He is carrying a small asparagus. Alfred, we must find a way to stop this beast.
And I also remember the amount of sound effects, because back then I was doing all the editing and sound effects, and with all the machinery of all the toys and the Larry Mobile and all the things that the Fib crunched and broke. There was much more sound effects work in that show than there had ever been in any previous VeggieTales.
Joe Sapulich, when he came in to apply for a job as a designer, and I wanted to know, can you draw funny?
I'm like, well, what does funny mean? How do you draw funny? Yeah, I could draw a funny character, but no, it wasn't the character. Can you draw funny?
So I said, okay, here's a test. You go home. I'm coming up with this character named Larry Boy. He's got toilet plungers on his ears. Here's what he looks like. And he needs a car, like the Batmobile. You go home and design a car for this superhero, and if I like it, you're hired.
So I was just trying to figure out what could be funny, and then I just figured, well, wouldn't it be funny if Larry, who designed the car, designed it to look just like himself? So just started drawing different things to make it look like Larry. Before I knew it, was really just Larry laying down with wheels on him, and then we just added some extra details to it to make it look kind of cool.
And so he came in a couple days later, and he had designed the Larry Mobile, toilet plungers for wheels, the whole thing. And I thought, okay, I like him, he draws funny.
Most of what I did was the environments, the backgrounds that you see, and the background paintings. And it was the first time in veggie history that we really put a lot of emphasis on the background paintings. Instead of building everything in the computer that you would see, we build a part of the set that actually needs to be built. There's no other way around it. But areas in the background we can actually paint, and we can actually make it look a little more organic looking, a little more fun and free-flowing than if we actually had to build everything out with 3D geometry. Most of that city scene that you see there is all modeled in 3D geometry. But as the buildings go back in the background, instead of having multiple buildings, there's just a flat piece of geometry with a bunch of painted buildings on it. And then all the sky that you would see are about 3 different paintings of clouds, different multi-layers. So that as the cloud is moving, that's one painting on one layer, and then the cloud in the background moving in a different direction is on another layer, and another layer, and another layer. And by doing it that way and stair-stepping it that way, we can add a lot of depth and vibrancy in the color that we couldn't really get otherwise. And we could do it at a much faster pace.
With Larry Boy, it's not nearly as light as the stuff we had done before, because I was really trying to parody not just Batman, but specifically Tim Burton's Batman. You know, the dramatic Michael Keaton, I'm Batman. You know, that thing. Duh! You know, the Gothic score, the Danny Elfman score. So it was a very specific parody, not just Batman. It's Danny Elfman, Tim Burton's Batman that we're doing here. And the score in particular, you know, Kurt and I worked really, really hard. Kurt, you know, just about killed himself on that score because we wanted to really bring it up a notch. You know, we wanted a men's choir. Oh, we wanted it Gothic. We wanted, you know, shake your seat kind of stuff. And that was a ton of fun. You know, and I came up with a few of the basic themes. Da 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 da, Larry Boy. You know, some of that stuff. Dum bum ba bum bum ba bum bum ba bum.
Larry Boy was the first real step into big score. Let's get it as big as we can make it, even though we don't really have a budget to do that. So we got 12 guys, a dozen of them got together. We met one night at the Moody Bible Institute in one of their classrooms and recorded. We were so early in the process that I hadn't written most of the score yet. So I actually wrote out 3 or 4, 5 pages of just little phrases. Larry, 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 Larry Boy. You know, or the Larry Boy, those sorts of things. Just writing snippets, dozens of them. Then I had this library of phrases, had them all written down on my paper. There's number 1 through 36. And then would just, as I'm writing, and say, okay, I think, oh, here's a dramatic point. I think it's time for the choir to come in. Okay, here's a phrase. Okay, right in that key up to that point. Drop the choir in, write the orchestra around them, and keep on moving. So that's why you really never hear any long choir phrases in that, because they're just, I almost treated it as one instrument in the orchestra.
I had picked up a kids album done by David Mullen that had just, it wasn't your typical kids album. It had some incredible songs on it. Just, you know, shake the house, crank it up, you know, move your fanny. I mean, really fun stuff. And I was initially thinking, man, just want to take a couple of these songs and try to use them in a VeggieTales video. But then as we got into Larry Boy, I thought, okay, you know, maybe I can actually work with him to do a song just for Larry Boy, you know, do a theme song. And so, you know, I met with him, gave him that assignment. It's kind of Batman, but, you know, a little twisted, but real big and real fun and kind of big bandy. And he came back, you know, in relatively short order with this, you know, kind of core groove that he wanted to do. Larry Boy, waka, 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 waka. And then his wife, you know, Nicole Mullen, actually recorded it and just, you know, blew me away. Like, this is the coolest thing. I can't believe we get to put this in our video, and nobody else can.
I think it's a really cool concept just to have a superhero who has all of the, you know, right things, you know, has all the equipment, has all the you know, has the costume and has all the right toys, but, you know, really isn't, you know, all that super. He's a nice guy, but not all that super.
We need to hurry this along. I have a meeting with the action figure people in 10 minutes.
Action figures?
Yes, Bob. Larry Boy Mania is sweeping the nation. If you're not on board, you're gonna miss the train. I am that hero!
And to keep my job, because drawing vegetables it's not the most difficult thing in the world to do, I decided to try to make it a little more complicated so, I'm protected. So I came up with a way to, instead of drawing a straight line in VeggieTales, to actually make it a little curved, just a little off. And everything, we call it the whacked look. So instead of drawing a box to look like a box with straight lines, vertical lines and horizontal lines, all the lines are curved to a certain degree. And it depends on what type of set we're looking for or how funny we want it to be. And that all makes it wackier or less wacky. But if you look at all of the stuff that we've ever done in the past, and probably what we'll do in the future, is that nothing will be at a perfect 90-degree angle. It'll all be curved a little bit, a little whacked out. And when the modelers build the sets, sometimes they build the sets to be perfect looking sets, and then they'll whack the whole thing out right at the last minute, just so it's a little off key. Everything's a little off kilter. I remember getting there my first day, and I cannot wait to get to my office. And then I found out that there was nothing in my office. We didn't have any pencils. There was no drawing board or anything. So I went to the guy next to me, and he wasn't in that day. He came in late. So I took all of his pencils, and I took his chair and his table, and I brought it all over to my office. So I'm drawing away, because I didn't even know there was a guy in that office. So he came into work. He was like, "Where's all my stuff?" So we were all sharing the same office for quite some time. But I just remember all we had was one blue pencil, and it was halfway done already. So all the early drawings you see is all blue pencil, because that's all we had was this one little pencil. So, and we were terrified because we were trying not to use it too much, because that's all we had left. So we finally ordered some more. It was a brilliant idea. And but we all kept a blue pencil. So the first 2 years, all the drawings are blue pencils, because I don't know.
Tim Gregory did the voice of the Fib. And so when he was the little Fib, we sped it up to make it cuter. And then when it was the big Fib, we slowed it down. And it got, huge. Like, oh, is this too scary? I don't know, let's try.
We had a lot of goals and expectations for the music and making it big, but we were behind schedule and running out of time. We had a deadline to work on. So that last week of writing was probably the most intense week of writing that I've ever had. So we had a whole act left with just maybe 3 nights to go. And so probably those last couple days, Phil and I literally stayed at the office through the night. I'd work and work and work. He'd sleep on the couch. I'd give him some ideas. He'd come in. Yeah, I like that. He'd hum out some ideas for the next section. We'd look at it. Back then, we didn't do things like think ahead and create a temp score and give us some ideas of what we wanted. We just took it a scene at a time. So by that last night, we were, I'd sleep in the booth for a couple hours and then get back up and just hop back to writing. There was one night, in fact, I remember Phil had to run home to help get his kids to bed. And that was a 45-minute drive away, put the kids to bed, drove back, kept writing.
Larry Boy and the Rumor Weed, I was taking the company in a very clear direction towards producing a feature film. I think the studio, was up to 50 or 60 people at that point, and we were pushing everything, as far as we could. We were pushing the lighting, we were pushing the score, we were pushing the animation, we were pushing the effects. Everything was just, okay, let's take it all further than we've ever taken it before. And in my mind, to be honest, Larry Boy and the Rumor Weed was to be the last half-hour VeggieTales video. And the one after that was Jonah.
We started Rumor Weed as sort of practice, for making a feature film. Just really starting to concentrate more on cinematography and, and lighting and just, how we frame the shots and making it more film-like. At that point, we're really starting to learn the craft, and had enough people, and we're hiring the type of people, the type of artists and technicians to really do great work.
I remember I was working on the design for the rumor weed, and we were going back and forth with how scary she should look and how funny she should look. And I just remember I was doing a scary drawing of the rumor weed, and my son came up to me, and he was just a little boy at the time, and he just kind of ran off. So I said, okay, that was a little too scary, so I better work on this a little bit more. The first time we actually color keyed a show, and that means to go through sequence by sequence and decide what the design for the actual color will be, is on Larry Boy. And we took a bunch of storyboards that were already pre-drawn by Luis Contreras, and I just started to add some color to them. I believe Dan Lopez did some of that too. And we just designed the color from sequence to sequence to try to lead the characters a little bit more emotionally, as an emotional beat throughout the story.
Everyone, listen to me!
The rumor weed had a crowd scene, and for some reason we thought we needed a wide variety of vegetable species represented in the crowd. And it was a metropolitan city, very diverse.
There's like 1 million different designs and characters that come in there. But everybody on the staff was just so into it, and they had all these really awesome ideas and all these visions, and everybody wanted to have something in the show. So we had all these people come up with different ideas, so we started to do different looking vegetables, and it was so funny because all these new characters just come on for that one shot and just really add so much to it. It was just a lot of fun to work together.
But also, they were worried about filling the space, so they decided to throw in a pumpkin, just to take up a lot of space, and these mushroom people that had, big heads to take up a lot of space. It was a lot of work, just to build and dress all of those. That was our first and last highly racially diverse crowd scene. And so by the time we got to Jonah, we'd learned just peas and carrots, man. Peas and carrots. And just cut and paste, different noses, different hats, but peas and carrots. Don't go messing with pumpkins and onions and all sorts of stuff. That's a nightmare. The scores, by far the most complex. We ended up recording an 80-voice men's choir, at Kurt's alma mater, his college that he went to in Iowa, and a full string section, and it was just. It was the first time we said we need to do a soundtrack album.
We really wanted to take it to the next step. So we actually decided, let's bring in some string players. It's just such an emotional instrument. It's going to add a lot of drive to the show. So we brought in 12 or 16 string players and recorded those. The other element, of course, was the choir again. Okay, we had a choir in the Larry Boy. Well, how can we take that up a step? Instead of 12, how about 85? So I went back to Luther College, my alma mater, and asked an old friend of mine, Tim Peter, if he had any ideas. And he said, yeah, we've got a men's choir here, the Norsemen. That sounds good, doesn't it? The Norsemen, 85-voice men's choir. It's one of the largest, if not the largest, men's college choir in the country. And he said, oh, they'd love to do this. It would be a fun project. So Adam, our audio engineer, and I went out, road trip to Iowa, woo! I think they had an indoor pool at the hotel, though. That was nice. And so we had 2 days, got these guys in the evenings in the choir room. If we were in a fancy studio, you'd have headphones for everybody to hear the music. We didn't even have that. So I would have headphones with the click. I'd take the pitch, and so the choir would be singing a cappella. Couldn't hear anything except themselves sing their phrase. We'd get it recorded, and then later I'd drop in the orchestra to fit with the choir.
I remember listening to the rough takes of that, for the first time they came back from Iowa, recording this 80-voice men's choir, and just putting the tapes in and listening to them. Okay, everybody, version 12. Larry Boy, oh. It did all these things completely random, completely loose, but it was so huge. I can't wait till that all comes together.
Rumor Weed, the character of the Rumor Weed, was a fun addition. We had to come up with a sound for her. So I used my trumpet, and it sounds like we used a wah-wah mute, Harmon mute, which you can kind of wah-wah-wah get some sounds on. But we actually ran the trumpet through what's called a talk box. A lot of guitarists use it for some interesting solos where they actually send the sound back through their mouth, and as they're talking, the sound is being shaped by their mouth. So you get this wah, 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 wah sort of sound. So actually, when you listen to those parts, you'll actually hear instead of just a trumpet sound, it's actually saying things like rumor weed and those sorts of things. It's kind of in the background there, but it's a little fun idea that we have that I've never seen used on a brass instrument before. I remember some of those late nights I was at the office by myself writing, and we had this box just sitting under one of the desks, and it was full of fan mail that got sent in. We hadn't gotten through all of it or hadn't posted it yet. And I just leafed through it, and that's when a lot of times it would really strike me the impact that we were making. Because you don't get that daily. You're in the grind, you're talking to your co-workers who are in the thick of things with you, and yet out there's people going, wow, this is affecting my kids, they're learning something. And it's just wonderful to see how these stories are impacting people. And that's what makes it so great when you're up late at night and working and wondering, okay, does this really matter? And then you see this sort of response, you go, wow, that's really a good payoff.
Help is on the way. Alfred, we've got some gardening to do.
Rumor weed was also kind of a highlight because we were exploding as a company. I think we're up to probably 120 people. And to debut Rumor Weed, we rented the Hard Rock Live, the Hard Rock Cafe's huge thing at City Walk at Universal Studios, and filled it, packed it with people, and then premiered this film. It was just a huge, huge party. Probably the biggest party we've ever had at Big Idea. It's like, the sky's the limit. Let's go make a movie. That's really what launched us into making a movie. So we had auditions for Dad Carrot, and I think that was his only speaking line he's ever had. And different people came in, and it was just, hi, I'm Dad Carrot. Our editor, John Waba, is Egyptian, and he wanted to try. And okay, well, we'll see what happens. And we put him in the booth, and so he did this really kind of bizarre Egyptian carrot.
Hey, I just read a book where dangerous robots took over the world.
Do you think Alfred?
He is on the library board.
And it just made us laugh, just like, that's really funny. We have to use that. We're just, John, you're gonna be Dad Carrot. No kids could understand what he said at all. People still ask us, what is he saying? But we don't care, because it was John, and we love John, and it worked for us.
I heard there are teenagers inside him that know karate.
This trailer was probably one of the most enjoyable and busiest days at Big Idea I've had, because that music was all written in one day. Phil came to me with a rhythm track. It wasn't even music, but it was just, okay, here's the tempo, and you'll notice every hit is on a beat. And that's the first time that we had really sat down and said, okay, we're going to make something driving like this. So that really inspired how we went with it. A much more mature sound. It doesn't have a kid sound to it, but using, percussive sounds and big hits and things like that I thought, wow, it's like I'm scoring a movie, a real movie, not just talking vegetables. So that was great fun to be able to do that and sit back at the end of a day. Granted, it was a long day, but a day, and go, wow, that sounds pretty cool. I threw in some vocal parts just on my own, and everything in there was done in one day by myself.
The initial two Larry Boys, Fib from Outer Space and Rumor Weed, they were both huge hits, and our fans loved those shows. And actually that led to a spin-off, which was Larry Boy 2D series, which was very different from the 3D series. It had a completely different look. The scripts and story structures were very different. Part of the challenge was kind of going back, to what we had with Larry Boy before.
I wrote an original treatment. I woke up one morning with an idea for Larry Boy, kind of a Samson story. The idea was good. We did some other things with the Samson story in development, so we put that aside for a time. But it didn't die inside of me, the desire for us to do a temptation story. And I really felt like that Larry Boy was a good vehicle for us to do that with.
This story is different from other Larry Boy stories because the other two dealt with a specific vice. And this story being about temptation almost takes a step back. It's like everyone's tempted to do a number of different things. You can be tempted to do something that's just plain bad, like lying, or tempted to do something like watching television which isn't bad by itself, but too much of it obviously is.
Temptation is when we're drawn away, when we're pulled aside from being who God intends for us to be. And that's what the core of this show is about.
Don't worry, Alfred. I'm stronger than temptation. I'm a superhero. Ah!
Larry Boy, obviously, he thinks he can control his chocolate. He says, I'm a superhero, I can deal with it. But it gets the better of him. He's not just eating the chocolate's eating him.
Beautiful chocolate.
I love white chocolate.
I like dark chocolate.
If you put like chocolate and French fries in front of me, I tend to go for the French fries, you know. So the Larry side of me would go for the chocolate.
Ah! Time to go swimming! Ah!
We needed to make sure that we represented temptation well, you know, and kind of embodied the character of temptation, you know, with, you know, a character who was alluring and, you know, kind of was easily able to talk people into things.
Finding the right voice for the bad apple was quite a search. You needed that nice bit of, you know, really a pleasing voice, but just a little bit of villainy in there too.
What kind of character would symbolize temptation? An apple is not necessarily scriptural for temptation, but it does seem to evoke in people's minds, you know, temptation.
Bad apple, you are rotten to the core! Go!
Not just any apple, a bad apple.
Knock, knock. Who's there? Just a pretty little apple with some time to spare.
Larry Boy, for all the fun it is to watch, was one of the most difficult shows I've been on. A lot of rewrites, re-storyboarding, re-editing, relighting.
There's a lot of levels in it, and there's a lot of texture to it, and I think there's a lot that people can get out of it.
And then we've got almost 2 climaxes in it that we need to deal with separately. There was one dealing with temptation.
Oh no! I've fallen into a web of chocolate temptation! Alfred, I can't get out of this mess by myself. I need your help.
And then the physical climax of getting rid of the villain.
Is it hot out here? Or is it just me?
It was a huge action sequence, and this whole big thing in Bumbleberg Park with the giant apple and the big spider legs and the webs. And
Larry trains for months before doing any Larry Boy episode, you know, with his super suction sit-ups, and you know, he does Stairmaster and bench press, of course, and he does all his own stunts.
it took him a while to get used to using the plungers as a mode of transportation. We had to re-rig them to support his weight, too, because he's put on a couple pounds since the last show.
Larry Boy had a weakness for chocolate.
That's why I needed the help of the good friends that God gave me to keep chocolate from getting the best of me.
We all are subject to being drawn away by temptation.
Learning how to deal with temptation is really important for kids because it's something you're going to deal with the rest of your life. I mean, you're a kid, it's usually smaller elements, you know, smaller temptations like food, like some candy, being tempted to eat too much candy or to watch TV too much.
And we need to be able to say to a friend, another godly person, look, I've got a problem with this. I'm weak in this area. I need your help. You know, I want you to know this. Being able to admit that to somebody is half the battle.
To have people in your life that you're not afraid to confide in, that you can trust and you can open up things that you're dealing with to them, it's a way to help you grow.
Just remember, God made you special.
And he loves you very much. Goodbye!
It's been so long since we've done a Larry Boy that it was in old software and old technology, and so really to do Larry Boy again is really like starting from scratch.
We thought, well, if we're starting from scratch, let's look at this. Do we have to do it the same way? And let's make Bumbleberg grow up a little bit. Let's put some taller buildings in and push the adventure side of it.
Most comic book shows or movies, every time they go back to it, A lot of times the location that the show takes place in is altered.
And so, you know, to get his plungers to stick and for him to be able to be mobile through the city, he needed bigger buildings, and so Bumblebird got a little bit bigger.
The script called for a big festival in the downtown, or the park. I was influenced by a lot of small town, kind of that center point fountain or statue that you usually have in a park.
The Larry Cave, Tim, the director, basically had this vision of this kind of circular cavern. So we had that blueprint, and then it was basically up to us to just flesh out all the computer gizmos and stuff in there. And we tried to think of a whole bunch of different things, that would actually make sense.
The Larry Mobile we've redesigned a little bit. That's kind of gotten redesigned with every show. Kind of harkens back to the cartoon version we did.
Top speed is around 200 miles an hour without the afterburners, so.
At least 120, 150, something like that.
If the United States didn't put a restriction on it, it would probably go light speed. I
always like to do a voice in my shows, so I picked Curly, this carnival barker. Hey, yeah, right. Kind of guy with his fedora tipped over one eye.
Yeah, right. Very smooth.
I did a quick animation cycle. I didn't want him slithering like a snake, so I made him move kind of, springy.
Now, great Uncle Ephraim, our time has come.
It was a fine line to walk to make her villainous but not too scary.
Temptation should look appealing, but the part that you don't see is that underneath, it's dangerous.
This is actually the first time in a while that we had a character with legs or arms.
We had to be careful not to make them too pointed, too sharp looking.
She's got 6 instead of 8. Somehow that's 2 less scary. Well, we had to redesign Larry Boy before. All of his collar and his belt and everything pretty much went straight across his body. And I thought, well, let's angle a little bit. His belt is a little bit of an angle. His collar comes up a little bit more. It gives him a little more action feel when he's standing still.
Well, when we get Larry Boy, his outfit is all gray. We do all the, paint the characters, the outfits, anything that isn't provided by the company. Like if there's something very specific. So we've got normal Larry, we've got Larry Boy in his little sweats outfit, Larry Boy in his pilgrim outfit. The further a building is in the background, usually the less detail we can put into it, and then the closer it is, the more detail it has to have. Because you don't want to waste your time putting a lot of detail into something that doesn't get seen. You don't really see inside the bathroom, but that there's, little toilet, little painting, or little pictures on the wall. It's a really detailed set. The textures that we make, it's kind of like it's a flat image, but that goes on a 3D object, I guess like a ball, and then having a flat piece of paper when you wrap it around where the edges meet each other. We have to make sure it lines up, and that's what we would call a seam. If we can't fix a seam, we try to hide it so that it's on a part of an object that you never see.
I usually start off by listening to what's being said in a certain shot. This is the storyboard.
Don't worry, Doctor. Get back to the Larry Cave.
Sometimes even write down what is being said and sort of think about how I'm going to act it out. So I'll maybe do a little thumbnails and pose out the character. From that one picture that we saw in the storyboards, I drew 4 other ones just to get a better idea of what I want to do. And we'll transfer these poses. And this is the final render.
Don't worry, Doctor. See you back to the Larry Cave. Over and out.
You start with one light, and that's mainly your first directional light. What the shadows will come out as. Minor rims or any other pieces, you just go right in and start adding the subtleties that is our job. And eventually we do put the characters over top of that. And what we do is we light them individually. You match them to the set, and then you try to pull them out just a little bit so that they stand out.
No energy. Needs chocolate.
I was excited to be coming back to Larry Boy because I knew that the music was going to have some great opportunities to further the story. It can be a challenge to find the balance between, okay, what drives the scene and makes it intense, but doesn't scare a little child, because they do sense something's going to happen because I hear scary music.
Curly, you've returned. Come, tell me what you've learned.
Some percussion in the background that's always driving something Doesn't have to be real big. It can be, I used a little scraper on some things. I used some little drums that I was playing throughout scenes that just keep you on edge and know, okay, something's not quite right. Something needs to develop here. And within that bed of movement underneath everything, then as action is happening, you can accent certain beats. Larry Boy comes in, so you go ba-ba-ba-bum, ba-ba-bum-bum-bum. Now Bad Apple comes in, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. The credits roll is one of my favorite parts because it gives a little synopsis of our music from the show.
Once I'm finished with them, I'll be the one in control.
The original Larry Boy theme song was much more kind of R&B and you know, a lot of fun, but we thought it'd be great to just consider other ideas for a Larry Boy song and what that might look like.
It pulled in a couple different writers to pitch us some different ideas.
The moment we heard it, we realized we need a hair band to sing this song.
So what vegetable has hair? Well, corn has hair. And then Todd Carter, who's our boarding artist, did a marvelous job boarding this segment.
We brought him out of semi-retirement, dusted him off and polished him up, and makes a grand reappearance.
When we put that trailer out, we all sat in a room and watched it together, and we asked ourselves, I wonder what it's going to look like, you know? And then to go in the next room and go, okay, well, it's going to have to look something like this and something like this. It was like living up to our own expectations. That was pretty tricky.
There was no shortage of ideas of things we could do and gadgets we could make for Larry Boy and vehicles, and I hope we do another one soon.
I'm 25 or whatever, and I watch the stories and I'll still get into it, you know, and still laugh and whatever.
I've always enjoyed Larry Boy. Larry Boy is a fun character to work with.
I'd love to come back to Bumbleberg as soon as possible.
I've always enjoyed Larry Boy, and I wanted to bring him back. It was fun to get the chance.
This is a problem too big for Larry Boy alone. I know just who to call.
We went through quite a long process to develop the League of Incredible Vegetables.
I am that hero!
We knew we wanted to get back into the superhero kind of world again with Larry Boy, but we wanted something more.
We thought, wouldn't it be great if Bob was a superhero and Petunia and Mr. Lunt?
And it became this league thing, and that got us all really excited.
Escape away! League of Incredible Vegetables, engage!
It was such a blast having Bob as a superhero character.
He's talked about it, you know, in Larry Boy and the Bad Apple. Of course, on the countertop, he said, I kind of want to be a superhero, and he kind of got laughed at and didn't get to do it.
Woohoo! That's awesome!
We had a lot of fun with how Bob reacted. First, he's surprised that he's going to play a superhero, and then when we come back to him on the closing countertop, you know, he's just supercharged that he's been able to do it and goes a little overboard.
Her name's Vogue. That high-tech suit can transform into just about anything.
With Vogue, Petunia was really fun just to kind of have her play the fashionista, you know, so she goes from her regular costume to a costume with a ski on it to, you know, a costume that inflates, you know.
That's Escape.
Mr. Lunt has his jetpack. He's Escape, so he can escape anything, so he's super fast.
Plus, I got an S on my cape. Get it? Escape?
One of the most fun costumes, I think, was with Junior and kind of Junior's ability to bounce and ricochet all around.
And I love how shiny he is. Like, he's just got this really cool kind of makes a little squeaky noise when he moves, you know?
I'm about to freeze all of Bumbleberg with fear. Unless, of course, you find a way to stop me.
We needed a character that really embodied fear.
And so that's where Dr. Flurry came out. Mark Steele just absolutely captured everything and more in that character. Lovable, but kind of scary, you know, but not too scary, and a little bit loose.
They're unstoppable, unfreezable. And seriously, doesn't anybody believe in seatbelts?
So when it came around to the show, we said, okay, we gotta have a great song. And then it came up, hey, what if we got the Newsboys?
When I first heard the catch sound, League of Incredible Vegetables, I was like, that's really different. But I think it's cool because of what it signifies. I think it's cool because it says something to the younger generation for sure.
My kids, I've all got a bunch of kids now. My oldest one is going to be 10 in a few days, so we've kind of grown up with VeggieTales.
It was exciting for me because I've been a Newsboys fan for a long time, so to actually be able to, to write a Newsboys song and write that lyric and then just hear, Michael Tate singing it back was super cool.
I would say sometimes the only way to a kid's heart is through their headphones. So I use music as my platform. We do the whole band as a tool to reach kids. So VeggieTales coming together with Newsboys is a perfect marriage.
Silly songs with Larry Boy, which we've never done a silly song in a Larry Boy before, so this is a first, and it's called Superhero.
Good citizens, don't fear, and be of good cheer. I love my new career. I am the superhero.
I get excited every show for the silly song because it's just it's like 3 minutes to just go do whatever, It's like you work so hard on the show, got to get the story right and the characters right, and you have 3 minutes to go.
Dude, he ate our cake.
I had one of those. I'd never be afraid. Really? You think a super suit would do that for you?
Kids get this idea of, wow, superheroes must not have to be afraid of everything because they can do it all. And look at these cool costumes, and they don't have to be afraid of the villains. But what we really wanted to do was concentrate on the lesson that it's not about the person or the costume. It's really about putting your trust in God.
Trust in God.
Not in my super suit.
Nope. Trust in God.
The idea of courage is not really about bravery or overcoming something, but it's forgetting yourself entirely.
I think a true hero is somebody who can do what they know is the right thing to do, even if they're tentative or afraid to do it. To push past that fear and to do something that needs to be done.
It takes months to plan a release, but with League, it's an incredible release. So we started over a year and a half ago working on this title. We knew we had something exciting. We have vegetables, and we have a League. The studio really made them incredible.
Here at Big Idea, we are committed to telling stories that are culturally relevant, and not only culturally relevant, but on topics that kids and parents both will resonate with and learn from and be entertained by. And one of the things we know is really popular is superhero. I mean, what child doesn't like dressing up? And on the same hand, what child also doesn't have moments of feeling scared and of not knowing what to do? And of course, for Big Idea, we know that there's so many lessons to be learned and lived from what we're taught about how we can trust in a power greater than ourselves.
So we knew what Larry Boy looked like as a superhero, but we really had to get into the mind of a superhero to figure out what the other characters are going to be like. Mr. Lunt, what's it like? What's it like to be a Gord in a cape? I mean, is there something that is relatable about that? Can most people understand what that means? Petunia, changing outfits, and she just is basically a stick. What's that look like? For us, what does that mean to be a superhero? Does that mean you got to wear long underwear and a Speedo? Sometimes it does. You got to do what it takes to be a superhero. Super can be broken down into 3 components. You've got Super Ball, Super Duper, and Superhero. And we decided to concentrate on superhero. Our superheroes are just like you and I. They live their everyday lives. They go to work. They put their pants on one leg at a time, kind of, and they're just everyday vegetable people.
My job and my team's job in marketing is to bring it to the market in the best way possible. And that involved a lot of incredible meetings. That involved a lot of incredible brainstorming and a lot of strategy. The Larry Copter, the superhero dress-up costume, the League of Incredible 6-character figurine set. We go forward in confidence as we build the League of Incredible Vegetables marketing plan.
So excited, can't wait for our fans to see and enjoy the League of Incredible Vegetables.